we are just gonna hop right into it. If I can figure out how to get this live studio in the window that I would like it to be in. Okay, that's good. Okay, so what does the month of May look like for us, guys? So for the collective, we are starting out with the mice in the house of the rider. So the way this works is each of these 36 cards is in a specific house in a specific placement, right? There is 36 cards, so we're looking at 9 rows of 4, and each placement is a house. Each house is a card in the Lenormand. So we're looking at the mice in the house of the rider. So the rider is all about messages. It's about communication. It's about themes of communication. So with the mice there is this idea that the collective may be ignoring a rot, right? The collective might be kind of just speeding past something right now, and we're like, oh, we'll take care of that later, or we'll see if that resolves itself. Spoiler alert, it's not going to resolve itself. You know, funny enough, the second house card that we have here is the key, right? So with the key being right next to the mice and the bear below the mice in place of the scythe there, that really indicates for us right now that the key is going to be to tackle this rot, right? The key is going to be to draw our attention towards whatever we've been ignoring, and to tackle that and tackle it relatively decisively, right? We really want to move on this before it becomes too overwhelming. The Lenormand's meant to be taken very literally. So think of this idea of mice, right? You get mice in your house, you set some traps, you call an exterminator, they go away. It's a problem that's very easily mitigated. The issue with this card is that nobody is actually trying to mitigate it. That's sort of the energy that we have there. Fits astrologically as well. I haven't looked at the astrology of May, but it definitely seems to be a very prominent energy, and I always shuffle for my first card because I feel like the Rider card really sets the precedent for the rest of the grand tableau. So I always feel like the strongest energy should be the one that pops for that placement. Like I said, we do have the, you know, I might just do this. I might take the card away. I'm gonna take the phone stream away. I feel like it's much better to just hold it up now that I have adjusted the lighting properly. Because I can get this like right in your face. Oh, maybe not. There we go. So the key here is in the house of the clover. So this month coming up in May, focusing on small victories is going to be a big deal. I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of big spurts of abundance, and that can be very discouraging. So I think May is going to be kind of the month that we might find ourselves collectively trudging through. So the idea of focusing on those small victories, really saying, hey, like I haven't made this big amount of progress, but if I add up all these little victories, you know, I've come quite far. And I think that's going to really be the energy that we're going to want to take with us into May, especially with the Rider card being a negative card. We really have to look at how we're handling these situations. The clouds being the card that is next to the key in the house of the ship is also very telling of that, because the ship is this idea of expanding horizons. Let me mute my Discord real quick. Sorry, folks. The ship is this big idea of expanding horizons, right? It's this idea of moving forward and doing so in a way that is very conducive to our growth. It has a very Sagittarian energy if I was to relate it to any astrological principle. But with the clouds there is disorientation and there's confusion, right? So in the month of May, we may feel like we want to work towards something, but we don't necessarily know what that something is or even how we're going to get there. So it's very important that we enter May with the mindset of growth can be messy, and progress can be messy and disorienting and confusing. But the point is that we're still progressing, right? That's a big point with that ship card, is that even when we are still and when we feel like the energy is stagnant, it does not mean our manifestations have stopped. It doesn't mean the energies that we've invested has stopped. And it doesn't mean that we have stopped, right? It's a bump in the road. It's just a place where we're sort of sitting in that energy and we're observing the energy around us. Now, where the good news comes in May is that we have the fish in the house of the house. So very good indication there that our home lives are going to be pretty good. So I feel like a lot of these challenges are really external and really to do with us versus the rest of the collective, honestly. I feel like for those of us that this may resonate with, the fish is very much about abundance, and it's about prosperity, it's about nourishment, it's about a place where you feel safe. And with that fish card in the house of the house, there is this idea that we are going to find a lot of comfort, in our personal space. Now, one thing to note is that the fox card is in the house of the child directly below that. So we may need to do a little bit of shadow work. We may need to do a little bit of inner child work. Those of us who may feel like our past won't leave us alone, this is going to be the month to tackle that, right? But we'll talk about that more so when we get to the fox card. The man card is in the house of the tree. Now it's very interesting to me. The man card usually shows up as a querent card when you are giving, say a regular reading. But it's very interesting to me, the fact that we have this in the house of the tree. The house of the tree is all about like our roots, our heritage. It does have to do a little bit with mental health, but I feel like mental health isn't necessarily going to be the focus for the collective this May. And I feel that way just because of these first four cards. Mental health tends to be more of an introspective process, but these first four cards very much indicate that the more challenging aspects of these energies are going to be with the collective. Now, the man is often a signifier card or a querent card, so it does highlight a little bit of that tree energy, in my opinion. But the man card also speaks to masculine energy. So the idea of, there may be some paternal issues you might be working out, if you have any, problems with family or anything like that, which I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I always like to throw it out there as kind of a disclaimer. But I feel like that might even be an energy that we may be moving on from. I think that with it being next to the garden card, there is an idea of diversification. So I think that trying to drink more water. So I think that in that diversification, we're really going to be tailoring the people around us to fit the energy that we are exemplifying right now. I feel like for the collective, that's going to lean a little bit more into the divine masculine side of that, just because we have this man card here, and the man card does very much represent that sort of divine mask energy, right? So moving to the card next to it, which very much affects it, we do have the garden card like we were talking about, but the garden card is in the house of the clouds. So that in itself is very interesting because, again, we have this disorientation that's coming from the clouds card, or the cloud house rather. But the garden card is, very much about that diversification. So much so that it's often a card that we see paired with the bird when we look at, who we're networking with and things of that nature. But it's very much about social groups. It's about community. It's also about culture. So I think that for some of us, fitting in may be something that we might have a little bit of trouble with, feeling like we have a place where we belong as a collective might be a little bit of a challenge, right? Finding what group that our identity is associated with, for lack of better words, may be something that the collective might be facing as a challenge in the month of May. And I say this because I think that going into the month of May, we're going to have a very strong sense of identity just from these first 4 cards in the spread. But I think that finding where this sense of identity fits with others, because we are, as a species, very social creatures, finding where this identity fits with others is going to be a little bit of a difficult path. It's going to be very disorienting and confusing. And that's where that garden energy is really interacting with that cloud energy. And I think that might actually be why we're going to be seeing a little bit more of that divine masculine energy pop in, because divine masculine energy, at least in my experience, it's very much it's very rugged. It's like, oh, I'm good. I don't need that social energy. It's very it's kind of like, I always view it as like really social, almost like a Leo, with that disconnection that other air signs bring. But I think that it's definitely going to be something that affects everybody in very different ways. I don't. Hold on, let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I don't actually know how to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm not even gonna lie. I'll put it on airplane mode. How about that? Ha! Okay, there we go. So yes, I think that identifying with social groups and people within our culture might be very difficult. Now, what's interesting about that is that it leads into excuse me. That leads into the House of the Snake with the Ship card. Now, that kind of calls back to the clouds in the House of the Ship, right? So the idea that there's disorientation or there's confusion on this journey might bring about sort of a sense of impending doom, or this idea of danger or discomfort. And I think that that's very easily identifiable, and I think that's where this energy kind of comes from. I think that it's not necessarily that there's people around us that are, hazardous or doesn't have our best interest at mind. I don't think it's that. I think collectively it's going to be an issue with trusting ourselves, and it's going to be an issue with kind of busting through that mindset of, I can't trust myself, or I don't know where I'm going, therefore I must be wrong. I think the danger here is self-doubt, and I think that's where that snake energy is coming in, because it's something that's easily recognizable. It's something that's very easily mitigated, but we can see the source of that in the 3rd house of the Ship with the Clouds card there. So definitely something to keep an eye out for there, making sure that the way that we talk to ourselves is reflective of the actual situation, right? It's appropriate. We're not over dramatizing hostility towards ourselves, or speaking in ways that are not necessarily the healthiest. So moving on from that, we have the Anchor card, and the Anchor is in the House of the Coffin. Now, the Anchor itself is a neutral card, right? It's something that's a little bit more thematic. It is this idea of grounding, setting down roots, things of that nature. With it being in the House of the Coffin, I find that to be very interesting, because the Coffin is about very definitive endings that are often painful, the idea of cycles and change. But with those cycles and change, it does focus on a little bit more on the finality of that change, right? So we might be seeing May as a month where we're transitioning, and that transition can be, you know, transitioning jobs. It can be transitioning, you know, old ways of thoughts. The tree is directly under it, the rider is adjacent to it, and the anchor is right next to it. So I think that this could be something where we are possibly going in an entirely new direction, sort of almost uprooting ourselves in pursuit of, you know, a dream, or, you know, whatever we feel is advantageous at the time. So I think that with that being there may be a little bit of some uneasiness with leaving those old patterns, those old, you know, jobs, locales, what have you behind. And there may be a little bit of a rocky start to this as well. For those of us that are transitioning, we may feel very uneasy about how stable we are, because often when we transition, there is a little bit of rockiness to this idea of stability, and that often occurs in that transitionatory period where the coffin speaks in great detail about. So that is definitely something to think about for the collective. I would say a good piece of advice for the collective there is to really monitor your energy reserves and to make sure that you are reacting to these transitionatory periods in a way that is non-emotional. And I say non-emotional because we've definitely seen the influence of the clouds, which is very disorienting and very confusing. We've definitely seen that become prevalent just in the first bit of this reading. So with confusion, disorientation, hesitation, with those being so prevalent and those being so closely tied to emotion, we want to kind of switch into that that rational thought process. That way we can mitigate a little bit of that. Like, oh, I don't know, you know, what direction this is going. Why is that? What can I look at? What causes are there? What variables are there? And what effects could that be? We have to start to sort of dissect those situations so we can get a clearer picture and really try to diffuse some of that cloud energy. So definitely something to look out for there. So for the next row, the second row, we have the bear. And the bear is in the house of the scythe. And this sort of speaks to what I was talking about with that idea of making sure that, you know, we're switching to a very rational mindset. We're getting away from those self-limiting beliefs, because the bear is all about adapting an opportunistic behavior, right? It's about creating your own abundance. It's about trusting in your ability to nourish yourself, to find the resources to continue on, right? The bear comes out of hibernation, and this is a very long period of dormancy for this bear, right? But just like we talk about with the ship, just because that bear is hibernating, it doesn't mean it's dead, right? That energy is still moving. So we're coming out of this period of dormancy, and now we have to hunt. Now we have to gather. Now we have to nourish ourselves, and we have to be very entrepreneurial about this. We have to be very opportunistic about this. And the bear sort of speaks to that, right? With the bear being in the house of the scythe, it's this idea that this is a routine that we need to establish, right? The scythe is very much about cutting away what is, and this is exemplified because the scythe is next to the house of the broom, which is all about routine. So the scythe is about cutting away the energies that are detracting from us or no longer serving us, and it's about harvesting those energies that are good for us. So we want to make sure in the month of May we're taking very close stock of the energies in the situations that are good for us and are bad for us, and organizing them and treating them accordingly. What is the significance of the different rows in the tableau? So the rows are there for formatting. for me personally, I take the significance by the reading, right? So some readings I'll notice the first row might be the first period of the next cycle, and it might close out very beautifully. And then the next row will be the next period. Sometimes I'll also notice that, the first row into the second half of the first row into the first half of the second row is a lesson. And then, it goes by chunks of lessons. So really, I think it very much depends on what the energy is doing. But I assign significance by the behavior of the energy. The rows in the grand tableau are really just to keep things organized and neat. So 9 cards across, 4 cards down, and then that gives you, your 36 card grand tableau. So it's a little easier and a little streamlined when you're reading it. But as far as how the cards are interacting with each other, I view it on a read by read basis. And this seems to be, my intention is for the whole month, so this seems to be just kind of picking pieces out of the energy of that month. That seems to be kind of what this reading is doing, but we might see a pattern establish as we're reading, we might not. So far it just seems like general messages for the month of May, based off of how the energies might behave, but we might see a pattern form later on in the spread. We'll see. But yes, moving on to the House of the Broom, we have the Woman card. So very interesting, because the Broom is very much about that routine. It's about cleansing our space, cleansing our energies, but it is also a significator or a querent within the grand tableau. So definitely something to look at there. It also represents very divine feminine energy, right? So in terms of how we are handling the collective from an external state, from me to you, from, you to somebody else, I feel like with that man card in the first row, we're going to be handling those interactions with a very divine masculine standpoint. But in terms of how we're handling our business, like how I'm handling, what I'm doing and what I'm going through, that's going to be done collectively in a very divine feminine way, right? And I think that it's very important to touch on that, because there is a very stark balance and stark difference between divine feminine and divine masculine. And seeing where those balances are is a very good way to look at the way the energy is flowing, right? So I think for me, I would cut that section off there and say that's how we're balancing the month of May, and those are some things that we might have to balance. So like I said, we might see a pattern further into the deck. I think that's going to close out that little pattern. I think we sort of talked about what the month of May has to bring in terms of some initial challenges, some overarching challenges perhaps with that mice card, and how we can handle those challenges and how we can balance that out, right? So the next card here is the Moon, and the Moon is in the House of the Birds. Now the Moon is very similar to the way it is in astrology, how we emotionally process things, who we are at our most authentic form, and how we internally react to things that are going on around us. Now, with that being in the House of the Birds, I feel like that's a big signifier that a lot of people in the collective are going to be feeling the same way about certain things. What those certain things are, unsure. Maybe we'll find out later on in the spread. But I think that there's going to be a lot of emotional connection between people in the month of May that we may not have seen in the previous months. I feel like collectively in the previous months, it's been very fragmented and very divided. I think we're going to see some unification in the collective in the month of May. And I think that it's very much going to be through the lens of the Moon, through the lens of emotion, and not necessarily the lens of rationality, right? Now, what's interesting about this is it is right next to the Fox card, so I think that people might start agreeing on things that may be controversial, or, God forbid, something bad happens, and that brings the collective together in a way. But we do have the Fox card here, and it is in the house of the there we go. And it is in the house of the child. So with the house of the child is all about innocence. It's about pursuing happiness. It's about passion and chasing passions, right? So with the fox there is an idea that the collective might take an unexpected blow in these aspects of life, right? The idea that we may be seeing things literally like wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah. So we may, and that may be where that moon card comes in, because it is connected to the fox card. We may all agree like, hey, that's fucked up. Oh, I'm sorry, messed up. I don't want to get censored by TikTok or YouTube when I upload this. But maybe I'll beat that out. But the fox being there is an indication that there may be some unexpected challenges in the month of May, that the collective just wasn't on the collective radar, right? And I think this is probably going to happen in the first quarter of the month of May, if I'm being honest, just because of the position that it's at in the reading. It's not necessarily halfway through the reading yet, but it's not in the beginning either. So I'm thinking first quarter of May, this is something that we might get hit with. But the good news is that this is right next to the book card. And it's also on top, not on top, directly above the ring card. So there is an idea that we have commitment, and the lily card is adjacent to it. So there will be people that are committed to rectifying this. There will be people that are reactive and reacting appropriate to this. And then we also have the book card. So I feel like this is going to sort of gear the collective to become very educated and very well versed in the world around them. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of the collective energy raise. I think we're going to see a lot more people increase their capabilities and their skill sets. I think this is going to prompt a lot of people to really start pushing forward and not just kind of let life happen to them, right? This book card is in the house of the bear as well. So the bear is all about that entrepreneurial spirit. The bear is about making our own abundance. It's about manifesting. It's about transmuting. So with that being there's an idea that this fox energy can be transmuted into something a little bit more positive. And we actually see that in the next card, which is directly next to the book, and that's the sun. So I do see that this is something that swings around relatively quickly, but it's definitely going to be something that the collective is going to be talking about for a little bit. But I think the effects of this is going to be very superficial in terms of how it affects the collective energy. The book is very much something that's taken literally, especially in personal readings. So there could be, journals or articles or, even books written about this. We could see people, studying more, pursuing higher education as well. So it seems like it is going to lead into a net positive in terms of the collective really increasing their capabilities. And then we have the sun card right after it, which is just such a positive spin from, that Stark Fox card. It's almost like we do a complete 180, right? So the sun card is in the house of the stars, and it's very nice because the sun card the sun is itself a star. So definitely something to I guess just a fun tidbit of information there. But the stars very much have to do with sort of our self-perception, our persona. Sometimes it has to do with public image, but I really feel like this is going into more of the self-perception persona legacy route, because again, I feel like this month of May is going to be something that's going to be very, very much an introspective journey for a lot of us, rather than focusing on energies that are outside of ourselves. So I think that in increasing these capabilities, there's going to be a big boost in self-confidence. There's going to be a big boost in how people feel about themselves. And that comes just from like, hey, I have, more skills than I had before. I handled this. I feel very capable. So I think that we're going to see that collective energy rise after that dip. I think that Fox card has a place, and it's very important in getting the collective energy to where it needs to be. And we kind of see this a little bit with the next card as well, with the oh, excuse me, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Hold on now. Let me go back. And this is why you read omnidirectional, folks, because it still matters. So, I misspoke. So, the book is in the house of the child, and the fox is in the house of the bear. So, flip that a little bit there. Hold on. So, sight, broom, birds, child. No. The fox is in the house of the child, and the book is in the house of the fox. The sun is in the house of the bear. Okay, so that's where we're at. So the sun being in the house of the bear really just speaks to what we were talking about. So it affirms anyway. But the sun is talking about our success in attaining that abundance and that happiness in our increasing capabilities. So it still is the same message, just different cards to signify that message. But if we move into the next card, which is the stork. Need the notebook? No, I'm good. But we move into the next card, which is the stork. And the stork is actually in the place of the star. So that message would have changed. So with the stork, it's this idea that actually the message wouldn't have changed, because the stork is all about, I don't know where these ants are coming from. The stork is all about bringing abundance, right? It's about bringing new things. It's about manifestations coming into physicality. And with the stork being in the house of the star, it's that idea. It was only one. I don't even know where it came from. But with the stork being in the house of the stars, it's that idea that we are bringing forth that positive self-perception. We're bringing forth that legacy. We may even, bring forth collective inheritance that is positive. But we're seeing this all really go down in the I want to say first half of May, because it's not quite in the first quarter, but definitely in the first half. And we're seeing that go down after this period of difficulty, right? So we're seeing this period of difficulty, this period of positive growth, and then we're seeing these manifestations come in. We're seeing these self-perceptions of ourselves really increase. We're seeing our net value and our perceived value from an emotional state and an energetic state increase. We also have the rider here, and the rider is in the house of the stork. So with that being said, I think a lot of these I think a lot of this abundance is going to come through way of communication. It's going to come through way of messages, and this idea that the collective is really starting to communicate. And I know in the past few months, people have been real, especially like spiritualists, have really been focused on collective consciousness and things of that nature. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I haven't really seen it in any of my own readings, but this is the first reading where I've looked at a card and be like, okay, collective consciousness. So I think that that's definitely going to be something that comes in as part of the collective sort of being activated by this event. But it definitely seems like there's going to be a lot more clear communication between individuals within the collective, and I feel like that communication is going to lead to some really positive interactions, and some cultural exchanges as well. I think is going to be a big part of this, so definitely something to look out for there. We do have the tree in the house of the dog, which, gosh, do I love the dog. I think the dog is one of my favorite cards in the Lenormand, because I love the idea of loyalty. Don't we all? Maybe it's a Leo thing. But the idea that our legacy and, our roots and our health, which is what the tree is all about, what the house of the tree is all about, or excuse me, what the card the tree is all about, the idea that that's being integrated and alchemized with the energy of the dog, which is inherently a loyal energy. It's a very consistent energy. It's a very nourishing and loving energy, and with that being so close to the stork card, I think that we're seeing a circumstance where we feel like we are very positively supported through hardships. And I say through hardships because the cross and the mountains are directly below and diagonally. Diagonal is right. Below and diagonal of the tree card. So that's not to say that we're not going to be enduring some hardships. I think that hardship is going to be something that we are going to be dealing with collectively in May, particularly in the later half of May, and I'll get to that as we move down the rows. But we are going to feel very supported, and the people around us, I think, for the most part, are going to be very loyal, right, within this month of May. So the next card that we have, trying to get it without knocking the cards off my desk here, is the letter. Now, the letter is very literal. The letter is in the house of the tower. So the tower is, in the Lenormand, very much a representation of the current institution, the business, the government, organizations, the current power base. That's all in relation to the tower in the Lenormand. Now, with the letter there, the letter is very much about messages, communications, and correspondences. So, for those of us that are leaving like old jobs, or there's a governing body or organization that we're attached to, there may be some communication back and forth between you and that body. And I think that with the tower directly below that, and then the bouquet adjacent to it, and then you got the woman adjacent, I think that these communications are mostly going to be good, and this could be what was in the house of the tower, the letter. So I think that these communications are going to be pretty good. But with that being said, the scythe is directly next to it, which is a negative card. So I think that see, that's a very strong negative card. Let me see, what are we looking at? So we got the bear in the house of the scythe. And then we got the scythe in the house of the garden. And then we got the broom, we got the woman and the broom card. So I think for those of us that may be leaving a job or leaving a place of employment to take another opportunity, I think that may be the right decision, because I feel like there's almost a theme of layoffs here now that I'm looking at the other houses, and we have the scythe there, and we have the bear in the house of the scythe directly above the letter, and then adjacent to that we got the woman in the broom card, and then we have the scythe in the garden next to it. So I think that we may be collectively facing sort of some situations of, oh, they're laying off now. But I think for those of us that have taken the time to prep and find other opportunities, I think that we are in a good position to handle this situation, for lack of a better word. And I say that because we have the bouquet and the house of the woman directly adjacent. You got the tower and the house of the man that is, directly below. So I feel like there's a lot of positivity that is kind of flowing into the collective in terms of this situation, but there is still that, that idea that, hey, there may be some layoffs, they might be cutting away. You may not get laid off, but you may find yourself with diminished staffing resources, maybe feeling overworked as well. That might be a theme that the collective might be experiencing. So definitely, if you have not prepared for that, maybe just look around, not to fearmonger or anything like that, but just make sure that you are kind of prepared for that, right? And I think for a lot of us in the collective, we will be prepared for that. And honestly, I think that we'll land in a much better position than we were prior. I think that, these layoffs or potential firings that might be coming with the Scythe card is just going to allow us to diversify our skill sets, diversify our resumes, and quite frankly, chase that bag. A lot of times people don't, and this is kind of going into the bear and the Scythe, which is directly above this letter card. A lot of us don't chase that opportunity because we are afraid of losing the stability. And a lot of times that prevents us from moving forward, right? So this may be an opportunity for us to move forward. Tired of all these trials and tribulations. I feel you. But with that being said, we have the Scythe as our next card, and that's in the House of the Garden. So again, that's talking about, cutting away at what is no longer serving, that idea of keeping what is working for us. And I think that's going to be something that is going to be something that puts us in very confrontational positions as a collective. And I say this because the Lily is our next card, and the Lily is in the House of the Mountain. Now, the Lily is very much about, it's very much about innocence, right? It's very much about purity. It's about maturity, and things of that nature. And I think with it being in the mountains, the House of the Mountain, and it being connected to that Scythe card, I think a lot of us are kind of going to have to stop. I think a lot of us are going to have to stop being nice, if I'm being honest. I think that there are a lot of individuals in the collective that have become very passive at best, complacent at worst. And I think that the month of May, people are going to start being like, look, I don't care if TikTok monetizes me. The Lenormand is supposed to be real, so we're going to keep it real. I think the collective, we are going to start getting into a mode where, hey, I've been really nice. I've given plenty of chances. Now, if you fuck around, you can find out. And that is really where this is taking us, and we have to be consistent about that. And that's where the Scythe card comes in the garden, right? So there's going to be a lot of cutting ties. There's going to be a lot of speaking up. And there's going to be a lot of confrontation, and that may be difficult for people that are used to being very passive, or just like feeling like they have to be very nice. That might be a difficult situation or difficult lesson for those people to learn. But I think May is definitely going to be the point where people are like, I'm worth more than this. I'm not dealing with this shit anymore, right? And that's really where that Lily card is coming in. And it's really, it's next to the crossroads as well. So it's a decision that people in the collective are going to have to make, right? So that's not to say that you have to go down this route. But I think that looking at the energy of the month of May, it's going to be a whole lot easier for you if you stand on business. And that's kind of what this Lily card in the mountain is talking about. So with that being said, we have the ring card in the House of the Crossroads. Again, this just reconfirms everything we just said. The ring card is very, very much about commitment, and the crossroads is very much about making a decision. So literally committing to that decision, standing on business. Enough said. So this is by and funny enough, this is by the crossroads in the House of the Mice. And this may relate back to the mice in the House of the Rider, because the Rider is about communication. So what we may have seen decay and rot is our own feelings of self-worth and our own ability to clearly communicate, because we're sitting on what we need to say and not making the decision to be confrontational about it, put our boundaries out there, establish that, and be like, you're not going to talk to me any type of way. This is how we're going to do it. If you don't like that, then, there's the door. So there is going to be a lot of moving people on, and I'm not talking about the dead. So we have next to that the snake card, and the snake is in the House of the Heart. So ooh, hold on now, I done dropped a card. I don't know where the other one went. Oh, not in the trash, not the broom in the trash. We'll talk about that later. Spirit's wild. So we have the snake card in the House of the Heart. So with that, I feel like the people that we have been having issues with collectively are friends and family. So being confrontational, setting those boundaries, being like, oh, hell no, I feel like it might hurt a little bit, and I think that that's just something that we have to push through. But also with them being individuals that we are collectively close to and have established ties to, we know when they're lying, and we know when they don't have our best interests at mind. The people that are facing this issue in the collective probably already know who these people are. They probably already clocked it a long time ago, and like the mice in the Rider card, they probably haven't said anything about it. So we gotta move those people on, right? And we have to take an active role in moving those people on. How about coworkers that just need to leave? You can move coworkers on too. You can't make them quit, but you can make sure that their energy does not affect yours. At least on a level that goes deeper than the superficial. I don't know why I can't say that word tonight. But definitely something to consider there for your consideration. Now, with that being said, after this work is done, then we come into the house the house in the House of the Ring. So this is just a commitment to keeping our space clean, our energy clean. This is a commitment, just like in the Ring card, to standing on business and saying, hey, I've established a safe space for myself. I've established a space where my energy is not influenced or very minimally influenced by people around me. And I'm going to keep it that way, right? So really with that card, we're just looking at an affirmative commitment. So not a whole lot of message there. It is under the Stork and the Stars card, so that idea of retaining that abundance that we built and that we brought, and it is above the birds in the House of the Fish, so also maintaining the friends and the family that have been good to us and that pour into us and build us up, maintaining those positive relationships. We do have next to that the Cross, and that is in the House of the Book. So collectively, because the collective is going to be so focused on attaining new skills and attaining knowledge, it is only natural that we in the collective struggle to do so, right? Where there is a challenge or a goal, there is always a struggle, and the cross is really just speaking to that here. We have the mountain next to that in the house of the letter. And that is really an indication that a lot of what we may be having trouble with in terms of learning is just finding the appropriate resources, finding reputable sources, finding good books, finding good teachers. So that may be a little bit of a challenge in the month of May. But ultimately, this is something that we just got to deal with as a collective, right? And I think that it's going to be very important for those of us that are learning new skills and, maybe even pursuing higher education or, certifications, advanced degrees, things like that, to really make sure that it's something that we want and really make sure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that the sources that we're getting our information from are trustworthy. And I think that in vetting our sources properly, that'll help mitigate that cross card in the house of the book there. So very important there. Then we have the tower. I'm trustworthy, Maria, don't worry. And then we have the tower in the house of the man, right? So with the tower, enhanced by the man, I should say, because it is a signifier, and there is a lot of divine masculine energy there within the tower. It is an idea that we are going to also have to tackle the way we deal with the organizations, the businesses, whatever bodies or people that have superficial authority over us. And I say superficial because nobody has authority over me. I'm a Leo. But the people that we work for, the people that pay us, organizations, the governments, the rules we have to follow, we're going to have to handle that in a very detached way. We're going to have to recognize that the state is what it is, and we're going to have to recognize that this is the system that I'm in. How can I operate within that system to give me the most advantageous result? And that could look like challenging the system if you have the support to do so. It could look like conforming and utilizing that system to your most advantageous end, however that looks for you. But that's something that the collective is going to have to really make some decisions on, and something that the collective is really going to have to navigate. And I feel like that's been a very consistent theme for the collective, but we're going to see it play out a little bit more in the month of May, particularly towards the end of May. I think that these systems and these authorities are going to get a little bit tighter, and we're going to have to adapt and deal with that. So we have next the bouquet in the house of the woman. So the bouquet is very much about this idea of abundance, right? It's about this big idea of abundance, right? Like it just hits you out of nowhere. There's no small lead up to it. It's just like, bam, good shit's happening, right? So this is coming in the house of the woman, which is very focused on the divine feminine. So I feel like when we had talked about earlier that the way we handle ourselves and our own issues is going to be done in a very divine feminine way, I think this really speaks to the idea that we're going to be making a lot of personal progress, with our self-worth, and who we are. And I think that we talked about that a little bit earlier when we were speaking about I believe it was the stork. So I think we're going to see those things really pop in, and I think personally we're going to feel a whole lot better about ourselves and where we're going. And I think that this is going to be a direct result of the trials that we've overcome, right? So we have next the child and that is in the house of the lily, and it's right next to the bouquet, and it's right next to the clover. So our inner child, like our inner children as a collective, going to be living. Okay, so I think that there's going to be a big focus on innocence there. I think there will be some challenges in maintaining that childlike wonder, and I think that it's going to be difficult to act on our passions, because I think that there is going to be some challenges in terms of having the physical abundance to invest to do so. But I think that as a collective, there won't really be any loss of passion. And I think, if anything, we're going to see a net gain in the collective of people that are very passionate about something and willing to go after that passion. So the child being next to the bouquet and the clover, that idea of small abundance and big abundance just kind of slamming into that energy is so good. And that's a direct result of the commitment, because adjacent to that, we have the ring in the house of the crossroads. So that's going to be a direct result of that commitment to that choice to stand on business. And I think that the more we as adults protect our energy and remove the influence of other adults on our psyche and on our personas, the more our own persona or our own inner child is going to be able to thrive. Because what we're really doing by pushing that negative energy out is making room for our own positive energy to manifest, right? So that's going to be something that's a big theme with the collective. So with the clover here, we have that in the sun card. So we're getting a little happier towards the end of May. We're starting to see our efforts pay off towards the end of May as a collective. So we have the clover in the sun card. What that indicates to me, now the sun in the Lenormand is very similar to how the sun behaves in both the tarot and the oracle, right? It's this idea of happiness. It's this idea of going out in nature. The sun is also a star, so you can connect that to the house of the stars in the Lenormand, in the sense that we're highlighting that self-perception, that positive self-perception, mind you, that we're getting from this month of May collective tableau, and we are using that and it's by the stars as well. How about that? And we're using that to really fuel ourselves going forward. So I think, especially towards the end of May, there's going to be a lot of motivation to meet unmet goals, and I think that we are going to have met quite a few of our goals by the end of May. Now, with the stars card being in the moon, I love this because it absolutely confirms the first half of the reading. And it's below the crossroads card. I absolutely love that. So that choice to stand on business and to be our most authentic selves, with the stars card, we're seeing that manifest in a very exterior fashion. Who you see is who you get, right? And those are the type of individuals we're going to become, which I absolutely love, because a lot of people hate guessing the intentions of other people. So I think we're going to see a little bit more honesty, at least from ourselves, in terms of, if I mess with you, I mess with you. If I don't, I don't. That doesn't mean we have to be hateful towards other people, but we can also express our disinterest in furthering a relationship in a very healthy way, and that's where this is taking us, right? It is also allowing us to connect in a much more emotional way with people that we deem positive, with people that we deem to be a positive influence on ourselves, on us, and people that we deem fit to sort of be within our circle, right? The people that we find trustworthy. So this is going to be something that the collective, I think, is going to really be hammering down. I think, particularly in America as well, honestly. And I feel that way just because Americans are already kind of jaded compared to a lot of other cultures. So I think that this is really going to be something that we're seeing particularly in American culture. But that's not to say that this isn't something that's happening collectively around the world as well. But I think we're really going to because let's be honest, Americans are rude. So I think this is something that we're really going to see play out, at least here in the States. With that being said, we have the heart by the stars in the house of the moon, and the heart is in the place of the key. So really that kind of affirms that idea of authenticity, but also with the heart in the place of the key, it's this idea that following our passions and allowing ourselves to be very open about what we want, who we are, and when we want to be there by, is going to be the key to advancing, right? I think that allowing ourselves to really go after something without worry over the logistics of it, and that's not to say to go at something without a plan, but that is to say not to dismiss something just because it seems difficult. And a lot of people tend to do that, especially in societies that are either very financially driven or very socially driven. So we are seeing that quite a bit in the collective. There is also a man and woman in this card, so that's actually where we're seeing that merge of the divine masculine and feminine energy. And it's so interesting that we're seeing the merge of those energies as the key. So again, making sure we're striking that proper balance and making sure that we are enveloping all energies that comprise us, and making sure that we are showing the totality of ourselves and not just what we deem palatable for other people's consumption. Moving on from that, we have the birds in the house of the fish. Now, there is an idea here. The birds is about our social network, right? So these aren't necessarily friends. They can be friends, but these are, friends. These are people that are within, that are business associates, that are acquaintances, that are connections, that have skill sets that we don't have. This idea of connecting with those individuals, trading skill sets, learning from one another, advancing yourself, and allowing that to bring you abundance, right? There's nothing wrong with learning from somebody, trading them skill for skill, or paying them for their time, whatever arrangement you have, attaining that skill and then using that skill for your own benefit. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's encouraged. So it's all about leveling up as a collective, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be they're going to be helping one another learn. They're going to be trading skills. I can definitely see a lot of private bartering maybe happening in May. But with this being next to the heart, this is definitely going to be in regards to things that you're passionate about. Especially with the heart being in the house of the key. And then it's also below the house, which is in the place of the fish. So this is a commitment. So I feel like we're learning advanced skills, or skills that are going to be utilized for a long period of time. So this is definitely something to consider with your interactions with others, or if you've been thinking about like doing a collaboration, or learning from somebody that you trust, trading skills, paying to learn something, whether you're thinking about going to school for a trade or something like that. This is a good indication that this is going to be a great time to engage in those pursuits. They're going to be very fruitful. There's an idea that there's going to be a lot of fruition that comes from that. And that is next to the broom in the house of the anchor. So this is the card earlier, that one of the cards that fell down, and it is the card that fell in the trash. So we have to make sure that we are not doing away with routine. We have to make sure that we're keeping up the consistency and the commitment to maintenance, because the minute that we do not is when it just all goes to shit. I feel like while we're building, we need to stay on top of it. Once we have those skills that we talked about in the House of the Fish, maintaining them is going to be important, but we don't have to be on top of it like we have to be when we're learning it, right? So this is just something to consider there. Now, the broom is about maintenance, it's about routine, and it is below the cross in the House of the Book. So for this, we're directly talking about skill building. Just looking at the energy above it, we're talking about the commitment in building our house, which is directly adjacent to it. And then we have the challenges of the mountain that is also adjacent to it. So we can see a little bit of the challenges, and we can see a little bit of the reward as well in the previous cards. And then lastly, we have the dog. I hate the dog being the last card in the grand tableau, because the last card is the cross. So the dog is inherently about loyalty, right? It's about that ride or die. It's about finding somebody that is really, you're sticking with them, they're sticking with you. There is a mutual understanding there. You can get into, soul ties if you like. I don't personally, ascribe to that, but some people might think of it that way as well. That is what this dog represents. However, we're looking at this in the House of the Cross. And the cross it's very much your cross to bear, right? It's a source of consistent struggle. It's a source of consistent hardship, so to speak. So when you find those people that you really click with, that you ride with, and they ride with you, and you got a mutual understanding, and you're loyal and they're loyal, keep them close, because finding those people is going to be the challenge. There is going to be a lot of very harsh reality checks for the collective, particularly towards the end of the month of May. There's going to be a lot of harsh reality checks in whom are friends and whom are not friends. Who can we trust and who can we not trust? And that doesn't mean that these people are necessarily bad. And it doesn't mean that these people even have bad intentions for us, because the snake and the fox card are very far away from this cross card. But those people may not be right for you, right? We're looking for the people that are right for us. And with this cross card, it's going to be something that is a consistent struggle throughout the month of May to find those people. Keeping those people is going to be relatively easy because we have the dog in the House of the Tree. So once we find them, we got them. But finding them is going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. So for the collective, it's going to be a very difficult trial socially to find people that we can connect with on a deep level. But with that being said, that's all 36 cards. And we were able to do it in an hour and a half, which is 1 hour and 25 minutes, which is like 5 minutes less than the average reading that I do. So I'm pretty proud of that. But to wrap this all up in a nice pretty bow, we are going to want to be focusing on letting go of old habits, places and energies that don't serve us. We're going to want to focus on addressing issues as they happen, not waiting for them to fester. We're going to want to focus on open communication, standing on business. And we're going to want to focus on consistency and determination in terms of learning new skill sets and pursuing any, higher education. And we're going to want to pay very close attention to communications from authorities or powers that we report to. Job, government, organizations, if you're part of an organization, clubs even. We're going to want to pay close attention to make sure that we are in alignment with that, and if we're not, we're responding or handling that appropriately, managing our energy very well. But if anybody has any questions, let me know. If anybody wants to talk about the collective reading, feel free to drop a comment below. I'll leave these cards out for a few minutes just so I can reference back to them. And if anybody wants a private reading, we'll do $25. We'll make sure you're checking out my Expressions of Wisdom Kickstarter. Now that I've done the whole Grand Tableau, I'm going to plug it. It's on Kickstarter. Expressions of Wisdom. New Oracle deck coming soon to a city near you. But yeah, that is our month of May forecast, our month of May prediction.